It will help if I turn the microphone on. Anyways, I was saying, welcome back to yet another Monday critique. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm having a wonderful day. So I just want to start by doing some basic housekeeping to get things moving. So I'll switch over to my computer really quick and I'll show you guys where you could submit your images if you wanted to submit your images to be critiqued. And we'll go from there. And if I didn't say it, my name is Ernesto. So thank you for tuning in if you're live right now. All right, so let's switch over to my computer here. All right. Okay, so this is the Facebook group, which is called Fine Art Photography and Modeling. In this group, you can basically submit your images in this group. Not the entire group, is just one specific post in this group is pinned to the very top of the group. And in that group, you could go to the comment section, and in that comment section, you could submit your images. I believe this is the last image that was submitted, and there's a whole bunch of other images in here. I basically go through the list chronologically. So I basically start and I just go through from the top to the bottom. So please submit your images if you want your images to be critiqued. Today, we're going to be critiquing two wonderful images. Let me switch back to me. So today we're going to be critiquing two great images that were submitted. I can't wait to jump straight into those images. Guys, the way this works, the YouTube Live Monday Critique, the way it works is I would like you, as I go through the images, to basically put comments in the chat section. Put comments and let me know what your what you guys think about the images. Whether you guys agree, disagree with my view. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying. You can always disagree. But you know, that helps with a healthy conversation, and it helps not only me, but it helps the person that submitted the image, which is the creator of the image. So guys, please put those comments in the the chat section, and please put some comments in there right now. Let me know if you could hear me, if you could see me. I just want to make sure everything is good to go, and then I'm not talking to a camera that's not recording anything. So if you guys are out there, just say hello so I could make sure that the audio and the video is all good to go. And while you guys doing that, I'm going to switch to my computer here and get ready for the first image. You guys are being shy. Hello. Okay. Hello, Martin. How are you? Awesome. So I'm here. So you guys are hearing me great. So that's awesome. So let's move forward here with this Monday critique. Thanks, Martin, for updating that. Okay, so we want to start out here with this very first image, which was submitted by Carlos, and I cannot pronounce his last name, Carlos, but this wonderful image was submitted by Carlos, and the settings that he submitted with respect to this image, or the way that he captured this image, he captured it with a 5D Canon 5D Mark II, it looks like, and he shot this at 1/50th of a second at f1.8. That was the aperture. His ISO was at 1/800, and he used a 50 millimeter lens, which is a 1.4 lens. He utilized window light, and he also used a clamp lamp as well. I guess that's probably from Home Depot or something. So let's dive into this image. So again, please put comments down below if you agree, disagree with my viewpoints. The way I generally go through these images is I look at three specific things, which is light, composition, and posing. So let's start out with the light. And let me just say what I really like about this image overall. So what I really like about this image, I recently submitted some images to be critiqued at a conference that I went to, my personal images. which was a photo competition. And they basically said to me, you know, image is great. However, it had zero details in the shadow. So that's what they, well, they didn't say zero, it just said they wish they had more details in the shadow. So that was one of the nitpicky items. And when I look at this image, I love the fact that Carlos maintained that detail in the shadow. Like you could tell this is a very dramatic image. It's supposed to be, right? But you could still see the details. You could still see your hair. You could still see your shoulder, which is great. I really love the fact that that is there. So let's dive into the light with respect to this image. So what Carlos is attempting to do here was, at least in my viewpoint, was trying to isolate the subject, specifically like put a spotlight of light on the subject's face specifically. So in that respect, I think you really started out here with doing a great job. The one thing that I noticed that's a little bit distracting, and if you ever look at an image, like when I'm in Photoshop, what I generally try to do is I try to make my image so small, like zoom, is it zoom out or zoom in? Zoom out, so that you can make your image a little bit small and look at it from like, you know, a 10,000 viewpoint, and try to figure out what exactly catches your eye like immediately when you look at this image. And that's pretty much what I did with this particular image. And I said, you know, what is it that's catching my eye when I look at this image? And the first thing that catches my eye with respect to the light is the light that's hitting this wall right here. I don't think it was Carlos' intent for us to basically looking at the wall. I think he wanted us to look at our subjects here, which is pretty much her eyes and stuff like that. I think that's where he wanted us to look. So when I noticed this particular hotspot here, my eyes went there, and then I went to the subject. So I would have suggested here to correct this. The one thing I would have done is probably put like a what is it, a gobo, a flag, you know, on the light that you had. You know, you could have basically used any piece of material just to block the light a little bit, so it's a little bit more concentrated on the subject's face. So that's one of the things that you could have done while you were creating this image. But given that the image is already created, what you could do in post is basically try to dodge this area a little bit so that the eyes don't go straight to that area. So that's what I would say with respect to the light in this image. But besides that, the other thing that I noticed here in this particular image is that the shadow on her face here is pretty well defined, and it kind of, I know this wasn't the intent, but it kind of looked like a you know, like a little bit of a, it looks like it was unintentional, right? So what I would have liked to see was a defined shadow, maybe a circular shadow on our face or something. Or in post, you could have basically blend the lights and shadows here in post a little bit better. But other than that, I really love the drama to this image. I really love the fact that you have you maintain a lot of details in the shadow of this image. So I really think from a lighting perspective, it's a really good job. I think you did. So moving on, I'm gonna go to the comment section before I move on to the posing in this particular image. Let's move on to the comment section and see if anyone have any feedback with respect to this image. So let's take a look here. So it doesn't look like anyone have any particular feedback with respect to this image, with specifically about the light. I'm gonna move on to the posing. If you guys do have any comments about the light, agree, disagree, just put those feedback down below, let me know. Or if you see something else that I don't see, you know, put a comment down below and we could chat about it. All right, so now let's move on to the posing in this particular image. So from a posing perspective, oh, but hang on, someone just put a comment saying, oh no. Martin, what do you mean by oh no? Agree? Disagree? Why don't you elaborate on that? So while Martin collects his thoughts and hopefully write in a response to that, I'm going to move on to the posing, and then we'll get back to your question or your comment, Martin. All right, so with respect to the posing in this image, a couple of things that I look for when I'm posing my subjects is not just necessarily, posing limbs and stuff like that. It's also about getting a great expression from your subject. And one of those things that you could do is, as Carlos did in this particular image, is like parting your subject's lips and trying to get like different expressions. Maybe like slightly squinting their eyes and stuff like that. Those are the kind of things you could do to try to get your subject to give you a little bit more of an expression on their face. And I think you did that really, really well here, Carlos. And I think overall, I really like the mood and the feeling that I'm getting from this particular image. The one slight thing that I would have done from a posing perspective, instead of having her head, tilted away, I guess, from the wall, I would have had her top part of her head here lean into the wall a little bit. So her chin would have come this way and her head would have go to camera left. Her forehead would go to camera left on the wall and her chin would have come to camera right a little bit. And I think with that, you will get to see a little bit more of her eyes in that respect. But, that's pretty much it with respect to the pose. And that's all I would have done to adjust this pose. But I think, like I said, I think you have the expression there. I think you nailed it. This is not really a posing thing, but this is, I guess you could try to fix this in pose, but her hair, that's a little bit wild here. If I notice that, and it's hard for me sometimes to notice these particular details when shooting, but if I notice something like this when I'm shooting, I'll probably try to have them try to fix it. Or if I didn't notice it in post, I would have definitely tried to correct it, either using the liquify tool or the clone stamp or something, or some kind of, to get rid of that little distraction. But that's about it. So that's my thoughts in respect to the posing on this image. So let's go to the comments and see if anyone has any thoughts about the posing in this particular image. All right, so no one have any comments about the posing. So I'll move on to the composition with respect to this image. So from a compositional perspective, like I said at the beginning, what he's trying to do is concentrate the light on the subject's face, which I think from a lighting perspective, you did that great. So the only thing I would have done with respect to my composition here is that I would have come in a little bit closer. Like I would have basically isolated the subject right here, basically come in a little bit closer on her face, eliminate the background, so you can isolate the subject a little bit more from a compositional perspective. And that's all I would have done with respect to the composition, just cropping the image a little bit more so it could be isolated to her face. And that's it. I think overall, Carlos, I think you really did an awesome job with this image. There's very little that I would have changed with it, but I think you did a great job. All right, so let's move on. So I'm also looking at the comments and glancing at the comments to see if anyone has any feedback on this particular image, but it doesn't seem like you guys disagree or have any additional feedback on it. So I will move on to the next image. So this image was submitted by Patrick Collins. So Patrick captured this image on a Sony A57. You shot this at f 5.0, so aperture 5.0. ISO was at 400. He used a 70 to 300 lens. and he shot this at 150. He used the focal length as 150. The user AB, I think that's what is it, Alien B light with a beauty dish. Okay, so those were basically the things that he utilized to capture this particular image. All right, so let's dive into this image and see what we have here with respect to this image. So I think this image captures the current state of, you know, our society, which is like we are totally engulfed in our, you know, smartphones these days. So I think that captures that really, really well. All right, so let's review this from you know, the general stuff, lighting, posing, composition, and all that good stuff. All right, so from a lighting perspective, I think here, Patrick, I think you did a really, really great job in balancing the artificial light with the natural light. I think first of all, that's the one thing I see and I take away from this image. All right. So let's talk about some other things that we could have done from a lighting perspective. Well, let me talk about one other thing that I like about this image from a lighting perspective. The other thing that I like about this image is that you have a lot of depth and dimension in this image, which is one of the things that I always look for, to add depth and dimension into an image. And if you look here on the left side of the subject's face, you could see that there's a lot of shadow there, which is offering a lot of depth. When we are creating images, the one thing that I try to focus on is making sure that there's some type of three-dimensional factor to the image, because we're creating like a flat image, which is a two-dimensional subject that we're playing with here. So in order to add depth to it, you got to, you know, create the shadows on the subject's face to try to create like that three-dimensional factor. So I really, really like the fact that you did that, Patrick, in this particular image. So great job with that. Moving on to the other stuff with respect to the lighting in this image. So I don't know, this is one of the things that I struggle with, especially when working with models on a very hot day. So I don't know if it was hot on that particular day or not, but you could see here on his forehead, his chin, and not his chin, his nose bridge and stuff like that, you could see a hint of, you know, highlights, a little bit of highlights on his forehead and his nose. So I don't know if that was sweat. I don't know if that was just a lot of oil, or if that's, I don't know. So if I would have noticed that when I was shooting, the one thing, the things that would go through my head is like calculating whether or not I could get rid of that stuff in post or not, and how quickly I can get rid of it. That's the things that goes through my head when I'm doing this stuff. So if I know it's going to take me a while to get rid of this highlight from a person's head and stuff, I would just have them, you know, dry their foreheads or dry whatever it is that's a little bit distracting, and then we will go back and do the shoot again. So that's what I would suggest here. I don't know if it, like I said, I don't know if it was oil or if he was sweating or anything like that. So I would have tried to dab his, you know, head or something with a cloth to get rid of that sweat or oil. Or in post, the only thing you could do here in post is basically try to reduce those highlights on his forehead, his nose, and stuff like that. Just reduce it a little bit so it's not as pronounced. You don't want it to be so pronounced because it becomes a little bit of a distraction, right? So you don't want it to be that pronounced. So I would say try to do that in post, and if you are doing it, actually doing it again during a photo shoot, you know, basically ask the subject to dab their forehead with a cloth to get rid of the sweat or oil, whatever it is. But that's what I would say here from a lighting perspective with this particular image. The other thing I would say here is the tree adds a bit of a texture to this image, which is fine. But it's getting a little bit too much light in my opinion. So I would say And when you're creating this image, you know, there's something called feathering. You could feather the light, and instead of like having the light concentrate in this area on the subject full blast, what you could do is basically point the light a little bit towards the right of the subject, so he's getting hit with the side of the light as opposed to getting hit with the full, you know, whatever it is that you use in softbox or umbrella, whatever it is that you were using. Just try to feather it a little bit so not all of it would hit the tree, or if that wasn't possible, utilize like a flag to basically flag the light a little bit so it doesn't hit the tree that much. That's what I would have done from a shooting perspective. Now in post, what you could have done to try to correct this as well is what I love to do for the most of my images is put a vignette on most of my images. And like I mentioned in previous videos, is that not a lot of people notice that I put vignettes in my images because it's not very pronounced. It's very subtle, and that's what you would want when you're utilizing vignettes. So that's what I would suggest in this particular image from a lighting perspective. So that is all I would have to say with respect to the lighting in this image. But I think overall, like I said, you really did a great job with the balancing the artificial light and the natural light. So I'm just going to go to the comments here to see if anyone had any additional feedback with respect to this image, if they agree, disagree, or if they're seeing something else that I don't see with respect to this image. So I'll just see what everyone has left to say, if they have anything to say. So I'll let people collect their thoughts because I see a couple more people joining. So I'll let them collect their thoughts and figure out if they have anything to say or agree or disagree with what I had to say about the lighting. All right, so while they're thinking about that, I'm gonna move on to the posing in this particular image. So again, what I look for from a posing, so Martin basically just chimed in here. He just said, all excellent points you made. Okay, so thank you, Martin, for agreeing with that. So let's move on with the posing in this particular image. So from a posing perspective, like I said, for the most part, what I look for from posing, besides posing limbs and stuff like that, I try to look for and get from my subject a great expression. That's very important for me because without an expression, your image pretty much, what they say, die on a vine. But here's what I would say with respect to this image. I mean, I made fun of it at the beginning about, you know, this is the stage of, you know, this is a great capture on how our society is right now. Like we are basically tethered to our phones and stuff like that. So when I look at this image, right, what it's telling me as the viewer to this image, not even from a photography perspective, but just basically just tells me that this person is very much into his phone. And I don't know if that's the story, Patrick, that you were trying to tell with this particular image, but I would say if that wasn't the message that you were trying to say, that's the message that I'm getting. And besides that, when I look at it from a photography perspective, when I look at this image, I think more like a snapshot. I think this is more like a snapshot than an intentional thing. But Patrick, again, you can let us know if that is correct or not. So how I would have changed this image, I would have the guy get rid of his phone. Well, that's just my personal style because I don't shoot like that. But I would say have him get rid of it because he has like a cool outfit here. I mean, he's really looking cool in this outfit with the headpiece and, you know, the hoodie and stuff like that. So, you know, and he had all these accessories on his hands, and so he's looking really cool. So what I would suggest is capture that cool factor. I mean, you probably had other images of this setup as well, but I would say focus and try to capture that coolness factor that, you know, this guy is trying to portray. For me right now, when I look at this, I get, you know, that modern age person that's just stuck to their phones, you know, not talking to anybody else, but talking to people on their phone as opposed to talking to people in real life. And that's what I see when I look at this image. So again, Patrick, if that was the message that you were trying to portray, I think you nailed it. But if it wasn't, that's the message that I'm getting. So I would have just tried to get, you know, I would have tried to work this image a little bit more to pull out that coolness factor out of the subject. So that's all I have to say with respect to your posing on this particular image. And more importantly, forgetting posing, just general expression and the feeling that you're trying to portray to the viewer. So that's what I'm getting when I look at this image. All right, so let's go to the comments to see what everyone had to say, if anyone had to say anything about this. So Martin suggested here was social network age. Yes, I think that's the correct terminology, actually. Social networking age. You know, talking to people on the social networks as opposed to talking to people in person. So you're absolutely right, Martin. All right, moving on to the composition. So from a compositional perspective, I don't think I have anything to say with respect to your composition. I think you nailed it. It looks like it was a park, so it probably wasn't a lot going on. So isolating your subject the way you did, I think you really did an awesome job in doing that. So I have no additional comments with respect to your composition. So perfect job, great job. And that is all I have to say with respect to this particular image. So finally, I'll let you, the guys that's watching right now, if anybody is watching, yeah, there's a couple of people watching, have any feedback about this image or the previous image, drop those comments in there. In the meantime, I'm just gonna do some quick housekeeping here once again. Guys, like I said, drop those comments in there if you want to have a if you want to have a conversation, and we could do that. All right, so let's talk about how you guys could submit your images if you wanted to submit your images. So there's a group by the name of Fine Art Photography and Modeling, and in that group you could submit images to be critiqued. Now in this group, everyone shares their images. There's really some great images in here, not necessarily for critique, just sharing it with the group, right? So if I scroll through here, these are critique images, so not these. These doesn't count. There's a lot of images, sorry. So, okay, so from here, see like other people submit their images in the group, sharing it with the community. We have this guy, Zoe. I can never pronounce his name. He always puts some awesome images in there. So there's a lot of people that contribute images into the group. So if you want to join the group, you could do the same thing as well. Some people ask for feedback and they get feedback from the group. Anthony always gives amazing feedback when people ask for it. So it's a group. It's very, you know, tight knit. We, you know, try to help out as much as we can. But going back to how you can submit your images for critique. Okay, so there's a pinned post at the top of this group, right? And the pinned post is right here. Okay, so at the top of this group, there's this post. It's called Monday Critique Video Uploads. And on that post is where you would submit your images to be critiqued. All right, so you would just go into the comment section, right? Just like all these other people did. You're going to the comment section. So I'm going to scroll down back to the bottom here. Again, there's a lot of images people submitted. Oops, okay, there we go. So if you wanted to submit your images, you will go here, type in, you know, your settings or whatever it is that how you capture your image. And once you do that, you know, attach your photos and you'll be able to submit your images for critique and it will appear on the Monday Critique Show. All right, so guys, if you haven't yet, go ahead and drop those images in there and that will keep the Monday Critique going. If you enjoy the Monday Critique, it will keep going. All right, so let me transition here and okay, so those were the two images that we had to submit critique by Carlos and Patrick. So If you guys have any final thoughts that you would like to make about those two images, please drop it down below, and then we'll talk about it. After this video is completed, meaning after the live is ended, I still appreciate if you guys could drop comments down below to keep the conversation going, so that Patrick and Carlos could get that feedback, okay? Because it does help to get the feedback from the community. I mean, we all want to help out each other, right? So we will all want to grow collectively. I don't know everything, and I missed certain things, like I was shooting yesterday, and Benjamin, who was assisting me yesterday, he was pointing things out that I was missing on the model's dress and stuff like that. So you don't see everything, guys, and it certainly helps if you could, help each other out. I try to do what I can on this YouTube channel, but you guys, I'm sure you guys are experienced shooters as well, so you could definitely jump in there and give some assistance. And even if you're not experienced, I'm sure you have some inkling as to something that may be not right or what could have been done better. And as far as giving critiques is helpful to say, look, well, I would say this: when you're doing critique, is always mindful to say, okay, look, you're giving your opinion of how you think this image should look, but just bear in mind it's not your image, and what you're looking for, and what I try to look for, is from a technical perspective how I would have changed something a little bit different from what I'm seeing. I'm not trying to change the image completely to say, okay, look, we would have scrapped out entire project and do something completely different. But you just try to give a little bit feedback in the context of that image to help out that person so they can grow for the next image. So when you're critiquing or giving feedback on these images, just keep that in mind. It's not your image per se, it's not your style. So when you put your feedback, just try to stay in the context of that image and see how you can, make it better. All right, that's all I wanted to say about that. All right, let's see what people have to say. So Martin is saying, I like learning from you. It means a great deal to me. God bless you, Ernesto. Well, thank you, Martin. I appreciate that. And Keenho, I think I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but he is saying, or she is saying, I was thinking of buying a Godox 8200. Is it good for this price? I'm from Philippines, by the way. I really love your work. I have a love-hate relationship with the Godox 8200. I have the Godox 8200, and I really think I have a bad unit. So that's where the hate comes in. But I don't know if it's bad or just the Godox is bad. So what's happening with my unit, and I think, like I said, I think I just have a bad unit. But what's happening with my unit is that it's very inconsistent when it's firing, okay? When it fires is great. I love the portability factor of it. I love the fact that it pushes out 200 watts. I love that. But I don't love the fact that it doesn't fire when I need it to fire. I have a second unit, and the second unit don't perform in that fashion. It performs very nicely, and it does what it's supposed to do, and it works how it's supposed to work. But the problem that I have is when I'm working, I can't figure out which ones is working, which ones is bad. So I would say the Godox 8200, when it works great. When it don't, it's very annoying. So I would say, yeah, pick it up, and hopefully you don't get a bad unit like I have, okay? All right, so if you guys don't have any additional comments, I sincerely appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please put some comments down below. Let me know what you have to think about this video. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoy the video, because that certainly helps. So hit that thumbs up button on this video. And guys, if you got this far in this video and you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Good night.